within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, patriots and preppers. I am Mack Worley III, and this is On the Move, the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. As I've said before, this is not my show, this is your show. This is your grassroots activism movement. It's the On the Move movement, and it can't function without you, however it is bigger than one man. I want to thank each and every one of you for your patriotism and for taking the time to get involved. With that said, happy Easter, everyone. I have a little treat for you all right off the bat, and I'm pretty excited about it. It's a few years old, but every time Easter rolls around, I think about this video, and it just gives me a smile every time I do. So happy Easter, everyone. Here is a video or a clip from the Easter Bunny getting fed up with the man. So here it is.
And the Easter Bunny, hard at work during the past 24 hours. In addition to his usual duties, he apparently targeted photo radar cameras in Tempe. ABC 15's Tim Betcher shows us how the bunny managed to shut one of the cameras down for hours.
Here comes Peter Cottontail, hopping down the bunny trail.
Before he headed out to hide eggs across the valley, the Easter Bunny spent his Saturday night hiding a photo radar camera in Tempe.
It's all a scam.
Shelton videotaped the prank and then uploaded it to YouTube.
We was walking down University Roll, and I heard there was going to be an Easter Bunny going down there, so I figured I'd go tape him.
The 90-second clip shows someone dressed in the costume walk up to a red light camera at the intersection of Rural and University in Tempe. The bunny, who Shelton won't identify, takes a giant egg and places it over the camera, rendering it useless.
The Easter Bunny, I guess he was hopping mad about the fraud going on, about the photo radar, so he hopped around and then took this big egg and stuck it on top of the photo radar scammer.
Back in December of 2008, people dressed as Santa Claus pulled a similar prank also in Tempe. Drivers we spoke with support the shenanigans.
I think it's pretty funny, actually.
Yeah, tell me why.
Well, I don't know. It'd just be kind of humorous. I'd like to have seen it in person. I think it's kind of funny. You know, the cameras are kind of annoying.
Tempe police, however, aren't laughing, calling such behavior criminal damage. But Shelton says it'll continue until the cameras come down.
If the legislators would actually do their job, then the Easter Bunny wouldn't have to go out and do this kind of thing.
The egg covered the photo radar camera for a good 5 to 6 hours last night, but it has since been removed.
Okay, so the police department called this an act of criminal damage. So who is this really damaging? The only thing I see this damaging is the police department's revenue fund in trying to ticket everyone who goes through that intersection. And by the way, you know, there have been numerous traffic studies that point out the fact that if all you have to do to actually prevent people from running red lights is to increase the yellow light, just a matter of like a half a second or a second. So these traffic cameras are statistically proven to actually increase accidents as people slam on their brakes to try to prevent themselves from getting caught on camera. So this is actually a big fraud placed on by these police departments to actually create a revenue fund, a way that you can't really dispute the fact of you crossing over on these red lights or running a red light. And in fact, I'm pretty sure that the court has mandated penalties that can't be waived, even if the judge wanted to. So anyway, this is a great way to kick off the show. I am excited about the Easter Bunny, and you know, I just want to wish everybody happy Easter out there. Anyway, today is April 20th, 2014, and we have a really good show in store for you. There's so much going on in the news right now, and I'm going to try to cover it all in this episode all at once. I don't know if we'll have time, but we'll give it a try. We're going to talk about Harry Reid and his claim that Clive and Bundy supporters are domestic terrorists. We're also going to talk about the Environmental Protection Agency's war on the cattle industry and whatever you all would like to talk about as well. Feel free to call in with your own topics. Anything you'd like to discuss is up on the table, available. Our phone lines are open. We'll be taking your listener calls and reading your emails as well. So if you'd like to join the conversation today, please give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. Anyway, don't forget to check us out at our website, OnTheMoveShow.com, here at blogtalkradio.com/OnTheMoveShow. Make sure you follow us here on Blog Talk. That way you can get alerts to when we have shows coming up. Every now and then we may be thinking about doing a show in the middle of the week. We may do emergency broadcast if I feel there's something really important that you all need to know about. So with that said, don't forget to follow us here at Blog Talk Radio. You can also check us out at Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can like our page right there, and also feel free to add me as a friend on Facebook. So that's Facebook.com/Mack Worley. That's MACKWORLEY, and the Roman numeral number 3. So that's Mack Worley 3. You can check out us on YouTube. We got a YouTube channel on there. We got a whole bunch of original content, so don't forget to subscribe on there, youtube.com/OnTheMoveShow, and we're also on Twitter, twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And anyway, on our website, I just thought I'd mention it. We have a shop link there on the homepage. We got hundreds of products for sale on there, ranging from T-shirts to freeze-dried food, books that I recommend reading, bumper stickers, so much more. We got loads of Patriot gear on there, and it's all for Patriots by Patriots. We made this stuff originally for you. It's all original designs. So your purchases will help make On The Move bigger and better, and we really do appreciate your support. So we're moving on now, and since we were talking about how the show's getting bigger and better, I figure it's important to note that the next show we should be making some big changes here. We have new equipment on its way. I got a mixing desk. I got some new microphones. I got a whole bunch of new equipment, and it's going to all go towards making this program a little more professional sounding, a little better quality, and we'll be able to do a lot more technical stuff with this equipment. I'm pretty excited about it, so I'm hoping that it should be here before the next show, and on the next show we'll be using it. So I'm pretty excited. And I hope you guys will tune into that show and hear the difference in quality, because as I said last show, right now we're using a little Samsung Go mic, and it's a little USB audio thing that plugs right into the computer. It doesn't have the best audio quality, but it's a heck of a lot better than what I did in my first few shows. Feel free to go back and listen to the audio quality differences, and you'll notice a huge difference right away. I was calling in on my phone in the first couple of episodes, so there's a significant audio difference, and I'm hoping that there's a big difference when we get this new equipment as well. Anyway, so before we move into This Day in History, our first segment, I just want to remind everybody that we're doing a new segment on Sounding Off with Tank and Tony. We're on their show every Friday around 7 p.m., somewhere between 7 p.m. and 7:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So feel free to check us out there. Last Friday that I was on there, we were talking about fraud, voter fraud. So I did a segment on their show. It's a few minutes. Feel free to check it out. That's blogtalkradio.com/sounding off with Tank and Tony. And they have a really good show, by the way. They got a lot of really good views. They tend to lean more conservative. So I think you guys would appreciate some of the stuff that they talk about. So feel free to check them out. Anyway, so now we're moving on to our first segment of the day, and we like to call it This Day in History. And give me a second to find the clip there. There we go.
This Day in History.
Because people have got to know whether the president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Yesterday, our country can do for you.
Mr. Gorbachev tears down this wall.
And the people who knocked these buildings down.
A date which will live
In infamy.
We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
All right, this day in history, we have something that's kind of horrifying. A lot of people don't really want to talk about this, and I figure it's important that we bring it up. So this day in history, on April 20th, 1999, which is 15 years ago today, the Columbine High School massacre took place in Colorado. There were two students. The gunman was Eric Harris and Daniel Klebold, and they shot and killed 12 classmates, and they also killed a teacher before taking their own lives. So, for me, this tragedy, it's really fresh in my mind. Even though it was 15 years ago, it's really hard for me to believe that this was actually 15 years ago. I remember this happening, and I'm sure a lot of you remember it. I remember seeing the news and, how terrifying it was. I remember how upsetting it was for me, And for everyone else, to think that these kids were gunned down in their school, this was supposed to be a place that's safe. This is supposed to be a place where people can just go and they can educate themselves, and parents don't have to worry about their safety. This was really shocking to the nation. And to my knowledge, I don't remember this happening before. I was just 14 years old when this happened, and I think I just entered 9th grade, and I remember how scared people were after Columbine. People didn't think that schools were a safe place anymore, and like I said, I don't recall hearing about this kind of situation happening before. Maybe there was, but I don't remember it. And I remember thinking to myself how horrifying it was. It had to have been horrifying for the victims to be trapped in a classroom with a killer, and they had no way to defend themselves. The feeling of hopelessness that the victims had to have felt must have been crippling. And we see other shootings, that they're happening in the news all the time now, and the victims had to have been feeling the same level of fear and just helplessness that they couldn't do anything to defend themselves. We see shootings, stabbings, and other acts of violence in schools more than ever nowadays. And, I'm not sure if they're increasing in frequencies or if the media is just covering them more often. I know that typically the media goes by the motto, if it bleeds, it leads. So, with that said, that's why they like to cover these kind of things, because they're very sensational and they do get a lot of ratings. But, I don't know if there is an increased media coverage there or not. But, I hope one day that America will actually wake up and they'll realize that children are our most valuable resource. I don't understand why we don't protect them like we protect other resources that we consider valuable. We protect our banks with armed guards. We protect our politicians with armed guards. We even protect our celebrities with armed guards. So why wouldn't we protect our children in the same way? Let me ask you, as a parent, and for the record, I'm not a parent. So, one day maybe, but right now, no. As a parent, would you feel more comfortable with your children's safety if there were armed guards in your children's schools? What about if the teachers were trained with a firearm and allowed to carry a concealed weapon in the school? I know that if I had children, I would feel much more comfortable that my children were not in a gun-free zone. Okay, I would feel that their protection their protection level is probably a little bit higher if there's armed guards and the trained teachers are there allowed, not forced or mandated, but allowed to conceal carry if they choose to. Right now, they have absolutely no protection from bad people who wish them harm. And I think we all know that the best way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. We see that throughout history, over and over again. And we see time and time again that the whole idea of a gun-free zone is completely and utterly a failure. If only our legislators would pass some laws in America making murder illegal, making America a murder-free zone. They could make it illegal to commit murder or even to hurt someone else. Yeah, that would be great. It'd be great if they would do that. We'd be living in this utopian, violence-free area. It would just be amazing. If only we had a piece of paper making it illegal to do harm to another person. Why don't we have this yet? Oh, wait, that's right, we do have this. Murder is illegal in all 50 states. So is assault. But yet we still have murders and assault. How is that possible? It's possible because criminals don't follow laws. They don't care what a piece of paper says. They don't care what we vote on. They don't care what some politicians decree in Washington, D.C. By definition, criminals break laws. And, I always, when I hear people arguing about how we need more gun control, how we need more laws, more and more laws on the books, every year there's more laws. We're inundated with more laws and we don't even know what they say. I always think about what Sammy the Bull Gravano once said. He's a mobster. He is heavily in the Italian mafia, and he's quoted as saying, "Gun control. It's the best thing you can do for crooks and gangsters. I want you to have nothing. If I'm a bad guy, I'm always going to have a gun. safety locks. You pull a trigger with a safety lock on, and I'll pull a trigger without one. We'll see who wins. That kind of mindset is exactly what criminals think. They want you to be disarmed, just like a tyrannical government wants you to be disarmed as well, because everybody wants their victims to be totally defenseless. It makes sense. Why would somebody who's going to victimize somebody want the victim to be armed? With that said, why on earth would we pass more laws and more gun controls that criminals will not comply with? The crimes that they use firearms in are already a crime. What we need to do is punish the criminals and enforce the existing laws on the books. We need to make sure that violent criminals never get back on the street. If there's even a remote chance of them committing any kind of act of violence ever again, why are we letting them out of jail? Why are we letting them off the hook? They need to stay their butts in jail. The problem is our prisons are too overpopulated with nonviolent drug offenders. And I know a lot of you may disagree with me on this, but I don't think that drugs should be an offense where somebody is arrested for. And I'll get to that in a second. We'll talk more on that. But, right now the government has found a cash cow in arresting drug offenders. They make money for every prisoner they put into the prison system. And it creates this big cycle where the prisons then hire lobbyists who then persuade Congress to pass more laws that will put more people into jail for nonviolent offenses. And all of this, it gives the prisons more money to hire more lobbyists. So then we see more laws and more lobbyists and more laws. And it just keeps perpetuating itself until one day every single one of us is going to be in prison. That's the way it is. That's the way we're heading, and it just doesn't make sense to me why we're filling our prisons with nonviolent offenders and then letting the violent ones go. And all this is happening, while all these people are being pushed out due to the overcrowding, and we're failing to actually address the real issues here, or even fully enforce our own laws. Like, for example, in 2010, the FBI, they released information about how many people failed the NICS, the NICS background check system, which is you're required to do when you buy a firearm from an FFL. It is illegal to try to buy a firearm if you are a felon. So let's just look at the numbers here, okay? Out of the 73,000 denials from the background checks, there were only 62 cases that were referred for prosecution. 62! That's not 62,000, that's not 6,200, that's not even 620. It's 62 out of 73,000 people that went through the background check system and were denied. What? 62? But most of these were declined by the prosecutors or they were dismissed by the court. Okay, so what does that mean? All right, out of the 62 cases, though, let me just get to this first. Out of the 62 cases that went to court, just 13 people pled guilty. So what does all this mean? Does it mean that the NICS background check system is needlessly denying people firearms? Possibly. And, I would say that it's very likely because it seems to me that the Obama administration wants to put a wrench in as much stuff is going on to prevent people from getting a gun. So anything that they can do to deny you your right to defend yourself, I think that they're going to try to do. But, I would guess that these cases are not a high priority to the prosecution. And I have a feeling that the Obama administration's policies in the Justice Department have made these cases a very, very low priority for several reasons. First reason, I think, is because the more criminals that are on the street, the more criminals that stay on the street, the more gun violence that there will be. And that's just more fuel for the fire for the Obama administration to use. If they're able to say crime rates are rising and gun violence is rising, and they can bring more statistics, and even if it's messed up numbers like they love to do, they love to tell you that things are working out this way, but they only show you half of the picture, and then when you see the full picture, you really are upset. Like, for example, one thing that the Obama administration has done is they'll say, oh, we've denied this many people from getting a background check with the NICS background check system. But for example, if they said 73,000, they neglect to mention the fact that only 62 cases were referred for prosecution, and out of that only 13 pled guilty. Are you freaking serious? This is how they change the numbers, and this is how they play the game, all right? So you see, it doesn't help his argument for gun control to actually do anything about gun violence, which is probably why Chicago is the murder capital of the United States. According to Breitbart.com, during a 36-hour period over the weekend of April 11th, 35 people were shot in Chicago, causing 4 fatalities in a city with some of the strictest gun laws in the country. The city of Chicago is now being accused of changing the gun violence numbers to look like they're going down in the city. All this while they're calling for even more gun control. The violence will continue until they start respecting gun rights and people are able to defend themselves. It's a deterrent. It's plain and simple. It is a deterrent. If criminals don't know who has a gun and they are emboldened with the fact that knowing that everyone is disarmed, crime goes down. Everywhere we see gun rights expanding or gun control, being repealed, we see lowering crime. That's statistics. It's national, and there's a lot of state statistics and city statistics to back this stuff up. I'm not just making this stuff up. Go look it up yourself. Don't believe me. Who am I? Don't believe anything I say. Check it out for yourself. So, the second reason why I think it's a low priority for the Obama administration to actually get these violent criminals off the street, I think they like the fact that they can see or they can show more and more people are failing to pass the NICS background check system. So the more people that keep trying to pass the system, the more the Obama administration can say that it's working. So even though his administration is failing to arrest or convict the criminals who fail the background check system, it's this game that they play with the numbers. They can say, oh, look at how many people we stopped from getting guns, but they didn't do anything about it. The criminals were free to go, and they were free to go find a gun somewhere else. So, and here's my gripe about the whole prison system, industrial complex, and how we treat our nonviolent felons. And this is a question to you all that I've been kind of thinking about for a real long time. My opinion is that nonviolent felons shouldn't lose their gun rights, and in fact, I don't think that any felon should lose their rights if they're released. Okay, society always says that when you go to prison, you pay your debt to society. So think about this, okay? Why would we take away the rights from somebody who's paid their debt to society? Why would we allow them to be discriminated against when they go to get a job? Why would we allow them to lose their right to vote? And why would we allow them to lose a very, very important human right of being able to defend themselves? Okay? And I understand this may not be popular, but I'm going to say it anyway. Why are we denying these people? They are human beings too. Now, even the violent ones. Now, let me caveat this, okay? Let me explain myself in this situation, because even the violent felons, I think they shouldn't be discriminated against if they're released. Here's why. We should never release the violent felons if there's even a remote chance that they will commit violence again. How do we prove this? It's very difficult, which is why we probably shouldn't release them. If somebody's inclined to violence, we should never, ever let them do violence again to the public. They've not paid their debt to society. They've not been fully rehabilitated. So keep them locked up until we're sure that it won't happen again. As far as the nonviolent felons are concerned, why are we taking away their gun rights when they come out? They haven't even done anything violent. Let's say they tax fraud or something. Why are we taking away that guy's gun? That doesn't make any sense to me. And why are we locking up drug users in jail? That to me just doesn't make any sense. Think about it, okay? We talk about victimless crimes, and a lot of people don't think about it. A lot of people just don't want to think about the fact that it's an injustice. Really, it is. The biggest argument against drugs, okay, is that drugs will ruin your life. So we have to make it illegal to protect you from it because you're too stupid to make up your own decisions. So it has to be illegal from the government, okay? So with that said, that can apply to, let's say, everything that the left is trying to do, where they try to control our lives, they try to tell us everything that we're allowed to do, they try to manipulate us, they try to basically, say what we can eat, what we can drive, where our children can go to school. No, you can't homeschool your children. All these different things that the left tries to control you. And even just something, look back at our history, everyone. All right, prohibition of alcohol. Do you really think that alcohol should be outlawed? Because it's not good for you. It's not healthy. Smoking, not healthy. So should the government tell you that you shouldn't be allowed to do it? And with that said, should drugs be illegal? I would say no. And not because I'm an advocate for drug using. No, I don't think that people should use drugs. But, how does this make any sense to any of you? Drugs will ruin your life. So we're going to put you in jail and ruin your life for doing drugs. So this to me doesn't make any sense. As long as there's no victim of the crime, or unless the victim is the person themselves, the perpetrator themselves, then why are you arresting this person? Why are you wasting taxpayer money? And more importantly, why are you overcrowding our prison system with these people and then letting our violent felons back out on the street? So anyway, that's my rant about that situation. But for me, I personally support veterans getting their rights back, and I'm curious what you guys have to say. So we're moving on. If you want to join this conversation today, please give us a call. The telephone number is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. And at this point, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
All right, we're back. Thanks for sticking with us. Okay, so if you want to join the conversation today, the number of the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. Anyway, so what I'd like to talk about next, actually, you know what, I think we have a caller on the line here we're going to be taking in a second, but we're going to be talking about here in the next few segments here. We're going to have the Mack attack. We're going to talk about Clive and Bundy and his ranch and all that stuff. We're also going to talk about the cattle war that's going on with the EPA, how they're basically trying to eliminate the rights of individuals, trying to just ranch for a living, and just earn a living. And why are they doing that? I'm going to give you some of my insights on that. But right now we have a caller on the line, and we're going to go ahead and take this call real fast. Hello, are you there?
Hello?
Hey, how's it going? Is this the Clark family?
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
Hey, so to my listeners, everybody who didn't hear last week, we had the Clark family on, and they were talking about their story of CPS, and we were discussing how they were about ready to go to court on Monday last week, and anyway, they're calling in to give us an update on their situation. So what happened?
Well, it's just a real quick refresher. They gave us like 2 days notice. They waited 2 months from their initial visit. We didn't let them in the house. We felt that was unnecessary. It was all about a cold sore. We won't get into that again. I'm sure you probably have archives. They can go back and listen to that. We went into the courtroom. We brought all of our kids. We were a little hesitant to at first, but if they're going to take them, they're going to take them regardless. So we brought the kids in. They were we were sitting at the back, and with all 5 kids there, they're extremely well-behaved, quiet. We expected that. The CPS worker who initially came out took a seat next to us. Real nice. I mean, he's being real nice. I was kind of defensive about him. You know, I was like, you know, look, you're putting us through all this hell. And he's like, well, actually, my supervisor over there, and he pointed at his supervisor out. I thought he was just going to drop this, but he decided to pursue it. Now, I was saying before, I think, about the supervisors, you know, with the whole kickbacks, and they get, you know, so much per child, and we're in a very hurting county. In fact, the cases that we heard prior to ours were talking about to the judge. He was saying, well, you need to help this lady out. She was like a meth head, didn't even care about whether her kid was still in custody. But the judge was really earnest about getting her some help. He was from outside of this county, I believe. And they were saying,
Andrew,
Your Honor, really hurt.
Andrew,
so,
let me give my audience a quick back brief here about everything that happened before this here. I'll just make it real fast. Just so you all know, Andrew and Suzanne Clark, they took their children their child into the doctor, and the doctor was basically trying to force immunizations on the child. And they didn't want to have their child immunized on everything, all 36, I believe, immunizations at one time. They were willing to do a few ones that they've done research that they wanted on, but they chose not to immunize on everything. And they said that they were going to go to a different doctor. The doctor basically said that the doctor didn't say anything particular about calling CPS, did he? Or she just basically said that she was trying to give your kid a shot or mess in the ear. That's what it was. Put the stethoscope in the ear, right?
Stick a stethoscope in his ear, and I had already told her, and it wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't dramatized. I mean, it was 5-minute questions with her, and I basically said, hey, I don't feel comfortable. I said, Caden, let's go. We're going to go to another doctor. And she got offended and grabbed a hold of his shoulder and stuck a stethoscope in his ear. And I as a parent, when somebody else grabs your child, I mean, that's an assault, basically. I mean, I don't want to blow it out of proportion, but that's what it is. When someone grabs you when you don't want them to, or when you're family members, and it's my child. So I said, no, we're leaving. I said, I don't want to deal with you. I'm going to go take him to another doctor.
And you guys went to another doctor, and you got all this documentation showing the other doctor's records, and then you went to an urgent care facility, got some documentation there. So your child didn't go without seeing medical help. But then a few months later, CPS shows up, and this whole thing starts, and they're trying to take away your kids simply for your views on immunizations.
Well, I want to kind of keep the facts straight. To be honest, Mack, they came out that next Monday. It was a Friday, which was Valentine's of this year, and they came out on that following Monday, which also was another holiday. So my wife was trying to switch their primary care over so that I could take him in. We knew that he wasn't running any fever, that he had it for a month and a half off and on.
And the CPS investigator actually put in his notes that when he saw Caden that Monday, that it was already healing. But we went ahead and took him into the emergency room the next day.
Just for verification.
After he visited. And then we took him to another doctor the day after that, and, they gave him some antibiotic cream, and then it was gone within just a few days. So it wasn't any big deal.
What do you mean?
And then it was 2 months later that we actually got the court order. We didn't hear anything else, not another word. He didn't come back again, nothing. And then we just get a court order, or served papers 2 months later. So
I see. Okay, so that's where the 2 months was. I got confused. Yeah, so it was a few days when CPS came out, and then a few months later they actually gave you the court order, and it's 2 days notice before you guys are supposed to appear in court. And anyway, so let's get back to what happened in court. You brought your children, and you were talking to the judge and the CPS agents and everything.
Right. The CPS agent was sitting next to us. He was trying to be friendly. I didn't like it. I mean, I don't think anybody would, but I could tell in his eyes. I looked him directly. I stared a piercing stare into his eyes and into my eyes, and I looked at him. And I could tell he felt bad, and he called his supervisor out. And I hope the guy still has a job. I don't even know. They weren't very happy with him sitting with us because in the middle of the court, his supervisor calls him up, and it seems that it had to do with another case, but then all of a sudden he pointed him and had him sit down further up in the aisles. I guess it wasn't looking good that the CPS officer was taking our side and sitting down next to us and the family. The kids were well behaved. The supervisor kept on looking back along with this girl. I don't know who she was, I guess another worker. wife or whatever, and she kept on looking back nervously and talking. They were making chit-chat. He kept on casting, the supervisor kept casting glances back at us, and nervous glances, man. So anyway, so our case is called. They did a lot of talking first, and we overheard them saying something about, the judge said, let's just go ahead and run with it. Let's see what happens. I don't know if they were going to call it off or what, but so we went in front of the judge. All the kids came up there, lined up, gave them their names. They were very confident. The judge asked their names, gave them some dum-dum suckers, and then he said basically that the attorney, he's very aggressive attorney. He came up, the district attorney came up to me and whispered in my ear and said, I think you want to have the kids taken out of here because you may not want them to hear what the judge is about to say. And I'm like, what is this? And so I said, no, these kids are grown. They're old enough to understand what's happening right now. They're very familiar with what's happening. And then the judge said, well, I will go ahead. Let's go ahead and take them out with the grandmother. And the case proceeded.
We pretty much
laid it down.
We had all of our hospital documentation from the emergency room and the other doctors. We brought paperwork showing we had taken other children in just in December just for a checkup. So we brought all that. We had affidavits from friends and family. We had them send us affidavits just saying, what kind of people we are, what kind of parents we were. So we didn't even really get to that. Pretty much after we kind of showed all the hospital paperwork and kind of explained the background, the attorney, the judge asked the attorney if he had anything else.
He was just he was a fish out of water.
We had the family code. I quoted the family code about the refusal to let them in your house. They're only supposed to go for a court order if they think the child's safety is at risk. And in all of his notes in the report, the CPS investigator's notes, there's nothing that indicated he thought the children were at risk. So, I just kind of quoted that family code, and the judge went ahead and...
he said, well, let it be known to the courts on this day. He said, let it be recorded that I have seen these children right in front of me. They don't seem to be in any kind of physical harm or, they don't seem to be physically abused. They seem, well, I don't see any point.
He said good physical condition.
I don't see any reason to pursue this. And the look on the district attorney's face was just in awe, shock and awe. A CPS worker, he said, y'all may go now. And I just kind of stood there for a second. And as I'm walking out, I wanted to shake the CPS worker's hand because he looked like he was happy for us. And it was kind of an awkward situation. So I was like, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to shake his hand. I was just so glad. I don't think if your audience, I don't know how many people listen tonight, but it's just the worst thing that you can ever go through, especially if you're trying to do right by your children. We homeschool for that reason. We want our kids to be brought up with the things we want to teach them. We don't want this Common Core curriculum C-scope shoved down their throats. We don't want to compare to each other kids. And
we make sure they play outside. We don't eat fast food. We don't let them drink sodas except, special occasions. Stuff like that. We're just so very careful in how we raise our children.
Leading up to the court case, it was a lot of stress, tears, frantic, freaking out. We didn't know what to do. We were the fish out of water. We didn't know what to do. We were online. We were talking to several people from our Facebook that were trying to help us out. People who've seen our Facebook over the past couple of years have we have another one too. We're wondering what's going on. We've seen these family photos. We've seen the videos that they've uploaded in the past, and this can happen to anybody. That's my point I want to get across tonight on your show. This can happen to anybody. If you're a conservative, if you're a patriot, if you're a prepper of any sorts, if you can your food, if you believe in sustainability, raising your own food, livestock, you could be easily targeted.
One word of advice is always, just in case, have some kind of camera ready, some kind of recorder ready, because if they ever do, you have the right to record them.
Absolutely.
So
I'll take a phone call from someone who's mad at you or doesn't like what you had to say to them. In this case, the physician's assistant.
And as far as recording them and everything, you have an absolute right to record a public official performing their duties. So when a police officer or a CPS agent tells you, hey, stop recording me, turn the camera off, you don't have to comply with that. That's a suggestion, not a demand. And if they're demanding it, they don't have a right to do that anyway. So keep recording them. As long as certain states have wiretapping laws and whatnot, where if you are, in public, you have to. It's like a two-party system kind of thing where you have to tell the other person that you're recording. But as long as you're not in one of those states, you're good to go. So.
States in New York are very big on the one-party consent. That means if you're talking to a business like Verizon, for instance, we've recorded them when we had issues. If it's a business call, I suggest everybody pick up a cheap digital recorder. Keep it by when you need it. You can get on your phone, put them on speaker. They don't know if you're on speaker, if you're on a cell phone. It's hard to tell. And you can record that even if you're in a state that's one-party consent. If you're making it's usually limited to personal calls in the two-party consents. Even if you're in a two-party consent, a lot of times, if it's a business-type call, that doesn't apply. If it's business related, then
all you really have to do is say, hey, I'm recording you, and at that point,
they always say at the beginning of their call, this call is being recorded. I'd say likewise, this call is being recorded, and then usually there's just some young person working behind the phone. They don't really care or pay attention to what you just said, and they've already acknowledged it. So.
Exactly. Until you get in the meat of the conversation, now they forget that you even said you were recording in the first place. So,
it is just out in so many cases prior to this issue. But as far as this CPS thing goes, we would never have thought that we would be the ones that would get targeted or called.
Well, another thing is we had a lot of people that were telling us, that where we messed up is we should have let him in the house. And, we have our Fourth Amendment rights. And, if you're a bad parent or a negligent parent, that's not going to help you. You should absolutely bring your kids outside, let them see your kids, that whole thing. But you don't have to let them inside because the thing is that when they come to your door, they don't have, but what was given to them in a report. And if you let them in the house, then they can find something if they really want to. So,
Absolutely.
We chose not to do that. So.
One other thing that's odd I want to point out, Mack, I know we're going to we're not going to do a lot, I guess, tonight, but what's odd about our case is they brought a specialist in right off the bat, a conservatorship supervisor. This is someone who's
after the court day, we actually looked up the supervisor's name and on the internet. And when we did that, we found out that he was a conservatorship supervisor, which means he handles only cases that are going for conservatorship.
He's the one that pursued this.
And all of the CPS workers underneath him are specialists. They are not just your typical CPS investigators. So the investigator that came out here was a specialist.
And in Rains County, they all know each other. They go to the same Emory Baptist Church. His name was Robert Vivido. He might be a good guy. I can't say, but it didn't seem like it in court. It seemed like he had one goal, and that was to win his case against us. He seemed very dumb. The judge basically said, hey, look, we're not going to pursue this order. That's it. But they all go to the same Emory Baptist Church. I picked up a Rains County newspaper a couple weeks ago, which is rare. You can find it online. But I picked one up, and my wife was thumbing through it, and she saw that Child Protective Services, what are they called?
A Child Protective Services Board.
Which is the women that we saw that were in these other cases prior to ours. They actually meet up at the same Emory Baptist Church. Everybody knows everybody. They see each other every Sunday, and they meet up on Mondays to talk about the cases. And so that's, you kind of feel a little bit out of...
And when I tried to look it up, I was like, what's the Child Protective Services Board? And I looked it up, and there's really nothing. I mean, I saw a couple of other counties that had it, but they were actually
experts
nominated by the commissioner's court and stuff like that. But, in this county, it's not like that. So I don't know if, pretty much anybody can be on this board or what, but there's no, official... they're not like officials in any kind of way.
For the record, they did take care of some cases prior to ours that we saw that really did. One was a mother that was, having drug issues with meth, which is a big thing in anywhere, I guess you could say. And the girl got reunited with her mother, and it almost brought us to tears. I mean, we also, before that, I mentioned was a meth head who was smoking cigarettes right outside, sitting on the wall. She was in a daze. They said that she had... I don't want to get into the details, but she had dishes in her bathtub with crust on them and stuff, and dogs and filth all through her house. And, these cases, yes, I believe that we do need Child Protective Services. I'm not trying to fire an anti-CPS here with this story of ours. What I'm saying is we have 5 children, and when they're hurting for money, 5 children, they could try to justify in any way they want to make themselves feel better that these kids are in a dangerous situation in order to help bring funds about. And I'm being blunt with that.
I think the problem is whenever you give any kind of monetary incentive, that's just not a good mix. You know, the monetary incentive should have nothing to do with actually protecting the children. There's a better way to do it.
These aren't criminal courts; these are civil courts. In other words, when you don't have a right to an attorney, a court-appointed attorney. You're on your own. All right, this is a civil defense suit, and instead of money or property being litigated, it's your children's.
Absolutely.
Your children's life.
And it is important to note that the CPS, they do some stuff that is very good. You know, taking away kids from terrible parents, taking them out of bad situations. You know, that's a really good thing. But you know, as soon as I heard your story, Andrew and Suzanne, I knew I had to tell people about it, and I knew I had to get behind you guys. And I had people, some of my friends, telling me, hey, you know, be careful getting involved with you know, a CPS issue, because you never know. You know, they could turn out to be, you know, be horrible parents. But I saw your guys' documentation. I heard your guys' story. You know, honestly, you guys are some of the best parents I've heard about. Yeah, I'm absolutely in love with you guys as a couple. You guys are great parents. You know, you guys are great teachers to your kids. You're teaching them values. You know, you're instilling things in them that I think are going to make them great people too. So, you know, this is America right here. That what you guys are doing, this is what it's about. And it was just a total injustice for them to do this to you and to put you in this situation. And you're absolutely right that if it can happen to you guys, it can happen to anybody. You know, you have to defend yourself now and prove that you're not, you know, putting your kids in a bad situation. You have to have documentation backing it up. You know, it's really unfortunate that CPS is corrupt in a lot of ways, where they're monetarily rewarded for taking kids away from parents. You know, even though they do a lot of good out there, you know, I personally, I couldn't sit back and say nothing. You know, I had to put my neck out on the line after I saw what happened to you guys. So I'm really happy that you know, you guys still have your kids, though. That's amazing.
Absolutely, Mac. I don't know what we'd do without them. I don't know that this is all over with. Like I say, I don't want. We can go on a little bit further. I don't want, you know, this to take up your time, but I will say that I've heard, you know, from older folks that their heritage has been here for a very long time. I don't want to get into names or anything like that, but this older folk that I've talked to up in their late 60s, early 70s, two people in particular that have said that there's corruption out here. These families go deep. The district attorney, a lot of them, they've been here, and we feel kind of like fish out of water. We would love to stay in this community and let people get to know us. A lot of the folks, like the women at the library, all know us on a first-name basis. They know the kids. They have a shortcut on their desktop when we come in. We don't even have to show them our library cards. They know these kids. We take our youngest, to the story time. And so they've seen it. And what I think they weren't prepared for is that we are known and that we do have people out there that have got our backs. I think that we were from Dallas. They just thought, hey, these guys are from out of state. Their father just passed away. They're financially strapped. You know, there's no work out here. I worked for Apple making $37 a year, and I worked for Thomson Reuters making about the same before we came here. There's nothing out here. I'm wrangling cows, Mac. That's how I'm making extra money. So we have things in the works to get a tech support job next month, working from home. Hopefully that works out. If not, we have other plans. We've had a big outreach of people that want to help us.
That's one thing I want to say is, you know, we really got so much support from people. I appreciate you having us. That, you know, helped us out a lot, just knowing that people were thinking about us and praying for us. And, you know, on our Facebook, we try to make ourselves an open book as much as we could. We put some videos up, you know, from last summer, pictures up from last summer all the way up, you know, till now, so people could actually see who we were and, you know, see how we interact with our kids. So, you know, we just really appreciate all the support we got, and it really meant a lot.
And we're not angels. We're not the perfect parents. We know we have a lot of things as parents to work on, and that's something that comes with parenting, period. But we do feel that, and I will rightly brag that when we go to Walmart, people come up to us, the Walmart and grocery stores, and people will come up to us and say, I can't believe you kids are so well behaved. Y'all been here, I've seen y'all down this aisle or whatever. But we got a lot to work on as a family, and no one's perfect. But I will say this was unwarranted. There's no reason for, you know, everything that she made in her statements, the physician's assistant, we shot it down in court. She's talking about I don't believe in doctors, that I told her that, well, which is I told the judge, I was like, obviously, I said, I got documentation showing that I took my kids into a doctor 2 months before, and why did I even bother to make sure my kids were insured, and I was insured under government insurance, which is awful, by the way. But I said, why would I go through all these lengths if I don't believe in doctors? Why would I have said something like that? With his nose bleeding every day for 2 months, if that was the case, Your Honor, don't you think my son would be dead right now, with that much loss of blood? He'd be in a sore state. Everything she said was, was pretty obvious, but yet they pursued it regardless. And I think it's about the money. We're looking at $4,000 per child that's adopted out under the Bill Clinton Act of '97. We're looking at extra $2,000 if they say that one of our kids has a disability. Then we have to pay them child support on top of that. Instead of paying for a lawyer to get our kids back, we're throwing all our money to CPS for child support.
And the actual investigators get a $400 a month stipend for open investigations, so that's rewarding them for keeping investigations open.
Oh wow, yeah, that's crazy. So let me ask you.
We saw that on their website.
Careers with CPS, you go look it up and type in careers with Child Protective Services, and you go to that page. It'll tell you what kind of money you can make.
So let me ask you, what's next for you guys now? I know you guys have this victory in court now, and I know that you're trying to basically stay on guard, for anything else, any kind of repercussions that they may try to impose on you. But I know I briefly heard you guys say something about still trying to basically get the word out and help people. Is there something that you guys are working on for that?
Well, we may even become advocates at this point. One thing I want to make clear to this audience is, we're not here telling our story to help lowlifes, the people who choose to continue being selfish and doing drugs and living a lifestyle or abusing their kids. We're not here to give them tips and tricks, because none of that's going to work for them. These guys are forensic experts when it comes to children. And, even a parent who isn't guilty of these things, they will come under the screen really heavy. And maybe that's what helped save us. But so you're refusing to let someone in your house. That's fine if you have no issues. But if you got issues, you're sunk either way. They're going to find it out. So, the best advice I can give is if you're a parent and you're listening right now, and you're out there snorting cocaine and doing meth and all that, and you have small children or kids that are underage, it's going to come back to bite you. They will take your kids. From watching the cases before us and seeing what's happened to those people's children, yeah, some of it's warranted against them. Some of them actually fought to get their kids back and were reunited. But there's others that we saw where, as soon as her case was done with, she's on her iPod as she's walking down the aisle to leave the court. Whatever.
She didn't even bother to dress for court in any kind of way. She was wearing a very dirty sweatshirt. It was really sad, very sad. But, for the parents out there, that it is unwarranted and it is unfair. Right now we're just still trying to get our video out. I reposted it to our wall, the YouTube video that we made, just to help other parents.
We're going to do a follow-up, too.
That, are in the, same situation we were, where it was unwarranted. We put an update on that YouTube video, and we're going to do another follow-up video, saying what happened with the court case. So.
We've had some things happen. We're not, we're on a dead-end street. We're the last house on the street. The next-door neighbor doesn't live there. He just comes every once or twice a month to mow his yard. But we've had some strange vehicles. We video recorded one yesterday, and this is after, like I said, I don't know if they got something out. It's a small town of 1,200. Everybody talks. But we had one come by, was it yesterday morning, I think it was, a silver truck, and they parked at the end of the street. They actually stopped for a while. They didn't park, but they stopped. And that's when I got the video camera. I said, why are they just sitting there aiming at our house? Their truck's facing the path going up to our house. And then when I came out there with the video camera, they gassed it and took off. So,
oh, wow.
I don't know if they're looking for a way to, try to take these kids, just looking for anything. We don't feel comfortable. We don't know enough people here yet. We know some folks, but it's a really strange. I feel like it's a Dean Koontz book or something,
Yeah. And it sounds pretty scary, and I can definitely understand, your concern for your children.
I'm really cautious what happened, but it could have been nothing. It could have just been, lighting up a joint or something, and they're like, oh wait, we've got a camera. I'm out of here. Who knows what they were doing, but.
Yeah. Yeah, well, after all you've gone through, you have every right to be a little bit suspicious and, and worried about that situation. But yeah, I'm just happy that you guys got your kids, and that situation was a victory. And hopefully, they leave you alone and everything's good to go. And if you guys ever need to get a story out, or you're trying to help somebody that had an injustice put on them as well, let me know. I'd be happy to try to get the message out about that situation as well, because
anybody who wants to contact us, they can. Mack, you can give them our Facebook and have them send us a message, and we're willing to hear the story. We're not necessarily going to jump on board and give them all these tips on what they can do, and unless we know what's going on. I mean, I don't want to help somebody out that's a crackhead and got found out, and they're just
absolutely. Yeah,
but
which is
thank you so much for having us on your show. It meant so much to us, and it helped just to know that people were hearing it.
Absolutely, and my heart was going out to you on that day. I was thinking about you guys all morning, and when I came home from work, I saw your guys' post update and everything, and I was so relieved. I was happy to hear that the situation was resolved. So, but not only that, but thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate you guys spending the time to tell us about your story, and then now obviously to update everyone and let them know what happened. So thanks again.
Appreciate you, Mack. And I just I don't know how many conservatives out there. I mean, we're not uber conservatives. We're not fundamentalists. We are kind of towards the conservative. We have like I said, our website, which is it's maintenance mode now. We're actually going through a new credit card processor, and the transition is going through. But I think I don't know what initiated a lot of this. We could have been tagged. That was not go there, but we know with the IRS stuff and everything else in this administration is kind of targeting people who prep, people who homeschool, people who that's even in the Obamacare stuff about homeschoolers,
And as far as the vaccinations go, we got affidavits. You can go to the Health and Human Services website and get affidavits sent for you for each of your child. You put in their name and their birthday, and then you take them in and get them notarized. And that way when you can go to the doctor, you can show them this affidavit saying, vaccinations for reasons of conscience.
And it's free.
You can mark on there which ones you want them to have, which ones you don't want them to have. So that's something we didn't know about before now, and that's something we have now. So that's something helpful.
Yeah. Well, and again, I was real hesitant at first to get involved in any kind of CPS issue, but after seeing your guys' documentation and hearing your story and finding out more about it, it was just made absolutely clear to me that you guys were good parents that were trying to do the right thing, and the government had no business being involved in the situation. That the government should have stayed the heck out of it. So I'm just happy everything worked out. But we're about to cut to a commercial. I appreciate you guys coming on again, and I definitely want to stay in touch with you guys and talk to you real soon. Okay?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Have a good night. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Happy Easter.
You too.
All right. So we're going to cut to a quick commercial break, and I appreciate you guys sticking with us. When we come back, we'll be back with the Mack attack, and we're going to be talking more about the Clive and Bundy Ranch and the EPA's war on the cattle industry. So don't go anywhere.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
And we're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us. So this next segment of the show is called The Mack Attack, and it's where I talk about outrageous events in the news. Here we go.
It's time for the Mack Attack!
All right, I want to talk about Clive and Bundy. I want to talk about this situation. I want to break it down. Let's analyze it. Try to figure it out, okay? So if you want to join the conversation while I'm talking about this, feel free to join in. The number of the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. If you don't want to be on the air, you're kind of nervous, maybe you're not a very good public speaker, feel free to shoot me an email. Anyway, so Mr. Bundy, he was paying grazing fees to the Bureau of Land Management so that his cattle could graze this land. It's public land that surrounds his property. Bundy's cattle have grazed this land for decades. All right, keep this in mind. This has been something that he's been doing for decades, even before the creation of the Bureau of Land Management, was actually founded. So, the Bundy family had actually been grazing this land since the 1800s. So this is far, far before the laws had even been created that would require them to pay these taxes, these fees, these grazing fees. So let me just ask you guys a question here. Apparently the state of Nevada actually gave the property to the federal government. So now it's federal land. So this leads me to the question, why does the federal government own so much land? Why do they need so much? And who gave them the authority to own so much land? Why isn't this controlled and managed by the states? Wouldn't the people that are there have a better understanding of how to properly manage the property? If we're going to have it managed by the government, which I think is a mistake, but if we are going to have it managed by the government, why is the federal government the ones who have to own it? Why can't the people who actually use and live near and are affected by the land, why can't those people manage it themselves through the state government? In my personal opinion, the federal government has absolutely no business owning so much land in our states. And let me just give you a little bit of insight here, okay? And this is according to Wikipedia, so keep in mind, it's Wikipedia. The federal government owns 76.1% of land in Nevada. They own 70.2% of land in Utah, 60.5% of land in Idaho, 46.2% of land in Oregon, 35.4% in California, 34.4% in Colorado, 32.2% in Arizona, 29.5% in Wyoming, 29.4% in New Mexico, 26.5% of Montana, 25.7% in Alaska, and 22.7% in Washington. Sorry, I know there's a lot of numbers, but why? Why does the federal government own so much freaking land? Why do they need that much land? And for the record, I know that there's vastly differing numbers of how much is owned over the internet. Believe me, I know. I did the research. I was trying to find out. And, these numbers I read off, they could be off. So don't take them, as set in stone here. But I just wanted to use them to illustrate a point. The government shouldn't own so much freaking land. Why do they have it? Why can't the states manage this land? Or even better, why can't we just sell the land to the people and let them manage it the way that they feel is best? I know people are afraid that our national forests and our parks, they'll be decimated by evil corporations. And I won't deny that we may see issues if we privatize everything. And I'm not even asking for us to privatize everything, like national treasures like, Old Faithful or the Grand Canyon. I want to make it clear, though, that these lands, they're already not being properly managed right now. Right now, they're being mismanaged like crazy. And why is that? Because the government's doing it. And the government doesn't know how to manage anything properly, not even themselves. The government is amazing at mismanaging things. That's what they're great at. They're great at fraud, waste, and abuse. They're great at mismanagement. These are the things that the government does well. That and defend us, in war. But as we see now, the enemies overseas that would wish to do harm to us, and we don't have clear, enemies anymore, with maybe the exception of Russia right now. I don't know. But it seems now that the government's turning its focus more on the people rather than enemies, which, again, is the thing that they're good at is fighting our enemies. So if This is just a thought. What happens if the enemy of the government is the people? Anyway, I'm getting kind of far into the weeds now, so I'm going to come back. One reason why this is mismanaged here, this land, is because the trees aren't allowed to be logged. And this is leading to them dying off. And, it's creating a situation where a tinderbox is just waiting to go off. And because we actually fight the fires in these forests, and we don't let nature naturally clear cut, and we don't clear cut ourselves because we're afraid to clear cut because the environmentalists are out there hugging all the trees and they're chained to every freaking one of them. The situation gets worse and worse every year because it gets drier and drier and more trees are dead, and it's this tinderbox that's just waiting to go off. And, I know this is a side point here, but I would just like to point out the fact that trees are a renewable resource. Trees are a renewable resource. What does that mean? That means when you cut them down, they will grow back. And it may take 20, 30 years to grow back, but if you sustainably harvest trees, which is what the logging industry does, because it behooves them that they don't run out of trees. That's the whole point of it. They cut a tree down, they replace a tree, and they try to do this in a sustainable way because they don't want to run out. They want to make sure that every year they have trees to cut down. So they actually will harvest these and then replant them in a more efficient way than nature would have done. They cram them into a smaller space. They put more trees per acre than nature would have done itself. And in clear cutting, they're getting rid of all the dead trees, the debris, and all the undergrowth that's being smothered by all this debris from leaves and things like that. It all has a chance to grow again and renew itself. And you'll see in areas where it's been clear cut that wildlife is thriving. These deer and all sorts of other wildlife are out there, and they're reaping the benefits of these clear cut areas. Now, I'm not advocating for clear cutting all across the board, but sustainable clear cutting, it works. And it's a great way to help nature renew itself. And it's a great way if we start planting, trees and actually having them planted efficiently. We can do better than what Mother Nature would do on its own. We can help Mother Nature. So why wouldn't we do this? Why wouldn't we cut down trees? This is the thing that these tree huggers on the left, they don't seem to understand, that trees are a renewable resource. I actually had a conversation not too long ago with somebody from the left, and they didn't seem to grasp that concept that trees are renewable. And I just think it's important. I'm pounding that point in right now. Trees are a renewable resource. They're not a fossil fuel. They are a renewable resource. Okay, so moving on. I'm not calling for the government, to sell the Grand Canyon, like I was saying before, to a company that's going to make it a landfill. That's a stupid move. Why would they do that? It doesn't make sense, And obviously, I don't think that a company would turn the Grand Canyon into a landfill. I think that there's private companies out there that would realize that there's money to be made by privatizing these national landmarks, so to speak. People would pay money to come see them. Obviously, they would. But, okay, even if the states want to maintain control over these national landmarks like the Grand Canyon and things like that, I think that they need to give up control of some of the land and hand it over to private sectors, especially the federal land, give it over to the states. And in my opinion, if we're going to allow the government to own and control land, it should at the very least be the state government and not the federal government that does it. And in my opinion, government agencies will never manage land like a private citizen that owns the land. And with that in mind, think about the feeling of ownership that you have when you own something that a government agent does not. And let me ask you a question here. Would you be more frugal or less frugal if the government gave you a credit card and allowed you to spend whatever you wanted for a month? Think about this. If you felt no repercussion for overspending, would you or would you not be more or less frugal? Of course you would be less frugal because it's not your money. And that concept applies with land ownership as well. The agents, they don't care about the land because it doesn't belong to them. The private landowners know that their livelihood and their property investment depends upon how well they take care of this land. So we're going to move back to talking about Clive and Bundy in a moment here, but I have a call that I'd like to take, and it's a good friend of mine. He's a frequent listener and caller in on the show. His name is Cowboy Josh. Are you there, Josh?
Hey, Mack, I'm here.
Hey, how's it going, man? I'm great. What's on your mind?
Going great. Oh, just a few points about the Clive and Bundy thing, the whole concept behind that. I've been seeing some comments online about, oh, it's the government's land, why don't you pay your taxes? You know, there's something going around about him paying the fees. But I wanted to point out something that no one else is pointing out. I've only seen it in a few places. And that's the Constitution. The Constitution has Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. And that's where it goes in and explicitly designates what the federal government can land, or what land they can own. It says 10 miles square, and it says it's appropriated by the 2 states that gave up the land. It talks about that. Then it talks about for forts, magazines, arsenals, and needful buildings. And I don't see any of those on the 262 million acres in the western territories here, western states. Might as well be territories of the government because they're sovereign. Over here, where the BLM and other services manage. I don't see that. And it makes me mad, so I just wanted to say that.
No, yeah. I mean, you know, I don't know the constitutionality as far as them owning the property. I do know the historical reference, and you know me, I love history. I'm a big history nerd, and this actually leads me to something that Thomas Jefferson did, and it's called the Louisiana Purchase. When he bought all the land up on the west side of the country there, he wanted to make it so that our country would be in control of its destiny. We would own our own continent, basically. So, and everyone basically agreed with the fact that, you know, that it's a good idea that they completed the Louisiana Purchase. However, Jefferson himself, he had trouble reconciling with the fact that he may not have had the authority to make that purchase. And it may be in relation to what you're talking about. So, you know, as far as that, I'm not sure as far as the constitutionality of it. I do know that the section of the Constitution you're referring to, I just don't know if there's any other stipulations that would give them the authority somehow.
Well, when it was territories, you know, we had the Nevada Territory pre-1864 is when it became a state. Before that, it was a territory, and what happened was when the state of Nevada applied for statehood, they didn't say, hey, look, we're going to have all the land within our borders. And that's where they screwed up. They let the federal government keep control of the territory there and then became a state. You can't have both. And with the movement that's come out of Clive and Bundy's situation, that's what's happening. They have this, there's a group that's been formed. It's called the Western State Coalition, the Coalition of Western States. They're trying to get the because 89% of Nevada is owned or regulated by the federal government. They're trying to get a lot of that transferred over to the state. I'm going to tell you, though, federal government's not going to let it over easy. It's not just there. Everyone knows that. Anybody listening to the show, if they know someone, you know, here in Washington or anywhere in the West or anywhere in the country that's having this kind of problem, help them get this out to the media. We need to get this thing going, because nothing's going to happen just with Bundy. You know, we have to make it viral, like the whole anything with the Second Amendment, like this, you know, getting the guns in the schools, arming the teachers. We have to make it a huge deal for anything to happen in this country. So if you know someone or know of someone, get them to the media. Get them out. Get them on InfoWars. Get them on the Next News Network. Get them on Mack's show. Get them on anything you can get them on.
And this story is happening over and over and over again. This isn't just happening just to Bundy. This is happening to so many other ranchers out there and people who are out there just trying to make an honest living, you know. One thing that I would like to point out, though, is that, you know, even though this is federal land, it's not owned by the federal government. Federal land and public land and state land, that's owned by the people. The people own that. So let me just ask, you know, what was that?
The feds aren't acting like that, though. They're not acting like it's the people's. When it's public land, they're basically saying it's our land. That's basically what they use the word public as. It's our land, and we're going to make the rules and regulations of this land. You can't bring your ATVs out here. You know, cases where they've made people own, you know, it's public land, but, you can only walk in or hike in, and I'm, and there's certain areas maybe that should be so. There's just so many things you can't do on them. They basically regulate you out of using it, period. It's no fun.
Absolutely, yeah. And do you know how the BLM actually started managing these lands in the first place?
Yes, I do. They the reason why is there was basically feuds going on between ranchers and things like that about water usage. Oh, that's my water. That's my water. And they came in and the Congress appointed this, and the ranchers said okay. They had a little vote, and they actually BLM, which is the Forest Service, said, okay, we'll measure out the water for you and make sure it gets all designated to all the resources are designated equally so we don't have this problem. And the ranchers signed on to it. And ever since, it's gotten out of control.
Absolutely,
is that right?
Yeah. And another thing, they came to the ranchers also, and they said, if you pay these fees to graze the cattle on the land, we'll manage the land for you. You won't have to do any land management. And how nice will that be? I mean, we know technically you own the land, because just like every citizen, it's public land. But if you pay us, you can graze on us and not on it. You can graze on it and not have to worry about taking care of the land. And that's a good deal, right?
Originally, the idea was pretty good. The fees were very cheap. I've heard some numbers thrown out like 3 cents an acre when they started doing this. This was actually probably lower than that. They started doing it in 1930s. It was in the 30s. 1934 is when this started. Like with anything, it's basically how taxes go up. The fees went up, and they started regulating all these people out of what they can and can't do on this land, and they were tired of it. Everyone's tired of it. They're basically being dictators. Not helping, they're hindering. And we're tired of it. We're just like, no.
They've pushed so many people off this land. Clive and Bundy, he's one of the last remaining people. He's the only one left out of all the farmers and ranchers that were there, grazing this cattle land. Now he's the only one. He's the last remaining one there. And as far as the fees, they say he owes over $1 million in fees for cattle grazing. That's mostly penalties. I was actually doing the math on that. I wish I had it right in front of me right now, but it's like it's something so small. I think it's like $5,000 for the amount of cattle that he had, $5,000 per year. So 5,000 times 20. I'm not a mathematician here, but actually let me do some math here.
The estimate was $200,000 total actual fees over the 20-year span, and they've just added a bunch of penalties on, like anybody does in this society anymore. You're penalized for almost anything. So but none of it's going to be paid. None of it's going to happen. I don't see anybody rolling over. We're just tired of the Forest Service program. We want it gone. We want to transfer the land over to the state level, or even the county level, which the closer it is to home, the more easily we can be vigilant citizens, as Jefferson would say, and get involved and be able to make sure that our county governments or state governments are managing the land to our favor and being fair and balanced about it. We can't control the feds. There's just almost no way to do it.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. And, I think it's important to note that Mr. Bundy, he did pay his grazing fees up until the point where the BLM started using the money that he was paying them to harass him. And they actually, messed up part of the land that he was supposed to be managing, because they were supposed to be managing it, but he had to actually do that on his own. He was out there building fences. He's out there, trying to keep the water right, because from what I understand, cows will just march right into the water and drink it up, and basically the way that they stomp it into the ground, it'll eventually, destroy the water table out there. So he had to stop the cows from getting into it and things like that, which is all part of the BLM's job description. That was what they were supposed to do. But Bundy kept paying these people to manage the land where his cows were grazing on, the land that the public owns, and the BLM didn't even manage it. So he kept paying them, and they're basically collecting a paycheck for doing nothing. And Mr. Bundy, he had to manage the land himself, and he didn't stop paying the BLM until 1993, after the BLM started harassing him and started using the money that he was paying them to basically try to kick him off his property. And like I said, the BLM now says that Mr. Bundy owes over $1 million in grazing fees. This is just like mind-boggling to me.
There's so many things going on. There's actually an interview out there on the Next News Network. That's a YouTube channel. You guys, if anybody can find that, there's a land. Basically, he's in real estate and land. He was land surveying for the BLM in the 80s and 90s, or it sounds like the 90s. And he's been watching this. You can go in. Every state has this. Every county, almost every county has this, where you can go in and look at the parcels. And there's very weird things going on with the parcels, particularly all over Nevada, but particularly in that area. And what's happening is it's being transferred from being public land, which the feds say is federal land, over to corporations. That's why when you hear about these things about Walmart giving $400,000 to whoever, that Chinese solar company, you know, there's things going on. It's being transferred without no one knowing about it, illegally and behind the scenes, and it's being taken from the citizens of Nevada or any other state.
Yeah, I definitely agree, man. It's really it's unfortunate that it had to come to this point where the militia's out there and it's an armed conflict between them. But I'm really happy with the way that things went down at the ranch, and I'd like to talk more about that when we get back from this commercial break. Josh, do you want to stick around? You got a few minutes to talk some more?
Yeah, I'll make a few more points on another subject after the break.
All right.
So. Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back then. I appreciate you sticking with us. And everybody, we'll be back with more with Josh and myself, and we're going to be talking about the Bundy Ranch situation, so don't go anywhere.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
And we're back. I appreciate y'all sticking with us. All right, we're going to be talking more about the Clive and Bundy situation, the EPA's war on the cattle industry. And if you guys would like to join the conversation, the number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. All right, I'm here with our guest here. We got Cowboy Josh. He's talking about the Clive and Bundy situation. You said you had a few more points that you wanted to talk about, Josh?
Yeah, just real quick, I want to give other callers time if there's any callers. So I want to make a few short, more quick points. Lost my train of thought. But anyway, I'm upset about that it has to come to this with the militia. On one hand, I'm upset, that the militia has to be, that our government's gotten this out of control and things have gotten to the way they are, especially with the BLM. I'm upset about that. And really I'm not, because history repeats itself, and, we know how history goes. Governments become corrupt and tyrannical. And this particular agency, or at least parts of this particular agency, in my opinion, are tyrannical. And that's why we have the Second Amendment. That's why we have the First Amendment. That's why we have everything. This is why we have our republic system. Our constitutional republic system with the democratic system of the voting and representatives and all the stuff that we have. It's good. I knew it was going to come to this, and we have the moral high ground at the Bundy situation. Anybody who is not completely worshiping the state or who's been misinformed sees it plain as day that the BLM in this case is tyrannical, that the state of Nevada should have had the land when they applied for statehood, became sovereign, and that even further, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 defines what they can own. So if you know the facts, this is plain and clear. You cannot side with the federal operation. You cannot, if you know the facts.
Absolutely.
And so this is what needs to happen to make a change in this country. Stuff like this, where it's clear that the citizenry of a state, the sovereign citizens of any state, have the moral high ground. We've done nothing wrong. We're just being robbed and abused. It needs to happen, and I'm really, really happy that it's happening. This can spread real big if we just push it. We have to push it. And it's the weapon to get our country, or the mechanism, I should say, to get our country back on track. I think this is it. This event right here. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
I definitely think this is a really, really important event for the country that we should have all been paying attention to. And I wish that I could have been there. I would have loved to be there for this.
Okay, and one more point. Yes, trees are a renewable source. Get off your high horse, greenies. And guess what? If we can get some hemp industry going in this country, we can reduce chopping down the amount of trees and balance out our renewable resource system and have some more natural forests growing. And then we can have the state and counties manage that so that the government doesn't try to take it and sell it to corporations. And I'll leave you with that.
All right. Well, I love that point, Josh. Thanks for calling in. And, I appreciate you calling in every time. But, yeah, I definitely agree with that point, though, on, the hemp industry. It could definitely help increase our paper and our textile industries. It's really, really useful in a lot of different industrial ways. Obviously, people, it got a bad rap from marijuana, but, hemp and marijuana aren't necessarily the same thing. So do your research on that, people, before you go bashing the hemp industry. Because especially if you're a tree-hugging liberal, and you really don't think that trees are a renewable resource, which they are a renewable resource. But if you think that they're not a renewable resource, then hemp would be the way to go. We don't have to chop down trees. We can make paper from hemp. So there you go. Good point, Josh. Thanks for calling in. Anyway, so with this situation with the BLM, they seized Bundy's cattle, and they were trying to get them to evacuate the public land. And according to Mr. Bundy, his cattle could get as much as about 2,200 at market. Okay, so the feds have returned about 130 head of cattle that they seized, but Cliven is still missing an unknown number of his cattle. So I'm no mathematician here, like I said, but let me whip out the old calculator here, and let's just say they never returned the 130 cattle that he has. And how much monetarily would he have lost? That's $286,000 right there, just in cattle that they stole from him. And by the way, cattle theft in Nevada, cattle theft is a felony crime. So they committed a felony crime 130 times or more because they don't know how much cattle they stole. So anyway, it's been reported that the feds have even killed some of his cattle too, and who knows how much money that Cliven Bundy has actually lost. And let's just take this back. Let's take this back a step, okay? The BLM supposedly started all of this over a desert turtle. They are abusing the Endangered Species Act to harass this rancher. So if you've been following the news lately, I know that you know that the Patriots and our militia all came to the Bundy Ranch to help him during the standoff with the BLM. Bundy stated that he was prepared to die and that he wouldn't back down. So, the militia, they had his back. And there was a lot of fear that there would be another Waco-style conflict. And, I was afraid that was going to happen. I didn't want to see it happen. Well, let me tell you, the protesters slowly walked toward the area where the BLM had captured some of Bundy's cattle. And the BLM told them that if they approached, they'd still be shot. Even though the protesters, a lot of them were unarmed, I don't know if all of them were unarmed. I think they were. But there was some militia back on the overpass that had firearms. I'm not sure what would have happened if there had been a firefight. So I don't want to put it out there that they were all unarmed. I don't know. But I do know that these protesters walked up and did not comply with the BLM's demands. They continued towards the BLM, and they freed the cattle. No shots were fired. No one from either side was injured, to my knowledge. And like I said, this should go down as an important moment in American history. You know, this is a Boston Tea Party style event against the federal government's oppression. So, you know, I think this is really amazing, and it kills me that I wasn't there for this. I feel like I missed the Boston Tea Party. Honestly, I feel like I missed it. You know, this is really upsetting. But, you know, I suspect that the media is going to brush this under the rug as soon as they're able to, because, you know, I don't think that this is something that this is an agenda that the media wants to push. You know, this to me just seems like one of those huge moments in history that, you know, we should be paying attention to. And I encourage all of you to not forget, never forget what happened at the Bundy Ranch. Never forget. Tell everyone about it. So anyway, my question, you know, and I keep mulling this question over my head. I keep thinking about it over and over. What does this mean to our country? What is this situation? What is the Bundy Ranch situation? What does it mean? What does all this mean? So, you know, I think that the fact that so many people flock to the Bundy Ranch, you know, it means that so many people are fed up with the federal government and the government in general. You know, they see what the feds are doing every day. You know, they see that the government is overreaching, ever expanding. You know, they're constantly usurping and stealing powers. They push their influence on us each and every day. From the kind of food that you can eat to the kind of car that you can drive, the government is everywhere. Everything they do expands their power while simultaneously restraining you from acting against them. So what really surprised me is when people who we elect into office call citizens domestic terrorists, okay? That to me, that's a title that should be really careful before we start throwing that around, right? You would think that somebody would be very careful before they start calling citizens domestic terrorists. But alas, we have Harry Reid from Nevada, Senator Harry Reid, calling Bundy supporters domestic terrorists. Here's the clip.
The Nevada ranchers, they pay their taxes, they pay their fees, and they follow the law. That's the way it should be. Now, what about Cliven Bundy? Cliven Bundy does not recognize the United States. He says that the United States is a foreign government. He doesn't pay his taxes. He doesn't pay his fees, unlike the rest of the Nevada ranchers. And he doesn't follow the law. There are 2 court orders that have directed him to get your cattle off the land. And one of them one of the orders was written by Lloyd George, who is really one of the most thoughtful, considerate people in the country. He has exhausted his ability to go to court, but now he continues to thumb his nose at authority. I think that we have to put this in the proper perspective. I've spoken to Sheriff Gillespie in detail. I've spoken to the Attorney General, Eric Holder, in detail. I've spoken to James Comey, the head of the FBI, in detail. Talked to him yesterday. I've talked to the Secretary of Interior yesterday. And it's an issue that we cannot let go and just walk away from it. Keep in mind what happened up there. There were hundreds of people from around the country that came there. They had sniper rifles on the freeway. They had assault weapons. They had automatic weapons. And as one of the former sheriffs in Arizona said, and we had children and women lined up because if anybody got hurt, we wanted to make sure they got hurt first because we wanted the federal government hurting women and children. This is the deal, and it's not a good one. So these people who hold themselves out to be patriots are not. They're nothing more than domestic terrorists. And I think that we are a country that people should follow the law. And what went up in Mesquite is not very good. I repeat, what went on up there is domestic tourism. Okay, domestic terrorism, not tourism.
You know what? It's beneath me to even make a joke about the fact that he said domestic tourism. I'm not even going to comment on that. That's just, you know, beneath me. But I will say that this guy is flagrantly an idiot. You know, how can you call citizens domestic terrorists? All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and go past that for right now. I'm looking on Twitter right now, and I'd like to change the subject briefly here. I got a message from Christian RC on Twitter. He says that on the Move Show, I would feel better if we had armed guards or trained teachers. Hashtag 2A. So, you know, there is a lot of public support for this kind of thing, and I appreciate you guys getting involved and letting us know how you feel. Thank you for messaging us. Anyway, you know, back to Harry Reid. All right, I find it a little bit funny that Harry Reid, you know, would like to call these protesters and you know, Bundy terrorists. And mainly, you know, one thing that I find it funny, this is kind of comical because, well, I guess we could call it ironic, not funny, because he's saying that they should follow the law, right? That's a good thing, follow the law. Well, you know, why do I think that's ironic? Oh, you haven't heard. Well, Harry Reid, he's been busted not once, but twice for misusing campaign funds. So let's just read a little article here from Breitbart.com. Harry Reid was forced by the Federal Election Commission to explain where $17,000 went from his campaign fund. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid acknowledged giving the money to his granddaughter for holiday gifts in late 2013 and finally reimbursed the money to his campaign. And let's keep in mind here that this was after he was found out. So now they found out, they shed some light on it. Oh, okay, here, I'll pay it back. Get off my back. I'm paying it back. So the Federal Election Commission sent the treasurer for Friends of Harry Reid a letter asserting that the treasurer must include a brief statement or description to clarify the following description of holiday gifts. So Reid's campaign operation had listed the holiday gifts as two separate payments, one to Ryan Elizabeth of Berkeley, California on October 23rd, 2013, and one payment was for $5,416.93. The other was for $11,370. Wow, those are some holiday gifts. So Ryan Elizabeth, that refers to Ryan Elizabeth Reid, age 23. Reid is Harry Reid's daughter, or granddaughter, sorry. Reid released a statement in which he said, "I thought it would be nice to give supporters and staff thank you gifts that had a personal connection and a searchlight connection. You know, but I have decided to reimburse the campaign for the amount of the expenditure." Oh, that was awful nice of you. You know, you gifted money to your granddaughter. I don't understand how that's staff or supporters. That's your granddaughter. How do you get away with that? So, anyway, the Friends of Harry Reid campaign stated that it filled out the Schedule B form in question properly. It said it filled it out fine, but the FEC has insisted Reid's team clarify it by the 25th of April, or there will be an audit or enforcement action. So, you know, Chris Anderson, a spokesman for Reid, said the report is accurate. The expenditure was for holiday gifts. The campaign complied with all FEC rules. The FEC lists examples of inadequate purposes as a warning to campaigns of what language is inappropriate to explain disbursements. Okay, so one item that's actually prohibited on the list is gifts. You know, and that's exactly what he said he gave. He gave holiday gifts. Reid's reimbursement may not excuse his campaign of reporting a more full explanation to the FEC. So it doesn't matter if he paid the money back or not. He's got to explain where this money went. He's not allowed. So, you know, with that said, I would appreciate it if Mr. Reid would stop violating the law. You know, I find it a bit ironic when corrupt scumbag politicians start lecturing us about following the laws. Harry Reid is dirty. He's a scumbag and a lowlife. Harry Reid is also an anti-gunner. And let me just point out the fact that he uses every excuse to try to take away our guns and our rights. He's on the wrong side of history on every issue. And let me just point out that he'll be forgotten to history. As soon as Harry Reid's gone, nobody's going to think about him. Nobody's going to say, oh, look at all the good that Harry Reid did. No. Harry Reid will be forgotten in the pages of history. No one will bother to write about him the day he's gone. In my opinion, Dirty Harry is a domestic terrorist. He's doing more harm to this country than anyone at the Bundy Ranch. And, you know, here's what Clive Bundy and Rand Paul had to say about it when they were basically commenting about what Harry Reid said. So here's a clip.
Federal government. I'm Eric Bolling in tonight for Sean. According to a report in the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Senator Harry Reid called supporters of the Bundy family, quote, domestic terrorists. In a moment, we'll talk to Senator Rand Paul. But first, on the phone with exclusive reaction to this breaking news is rancher Cliven Bundy. Thank you, sir, for joining us. So this is just breaking this afternoon. Tell us, when you hear Senator Harry Reid call you a domestic terrorist, what do you have to say to the senator?
Well, I guess he's right. I don't know what else would be. We're definitely citizens riled up. I don't know whether you could call us terrorists. There's most loving people here I ever met in my life, and we're meeting here together, and they're definitely upset about this government that pulls their gun on us, and you know, I don't know. I just can't see how he gets that type of description out of these people.
So, Clive, when they actually backed off a couple of days ago, it seemed like things had calmed down. Do you think Senator Harry Reid is inciting more people to come back and support you?
You know, I don't know. Sure he would be. Anytime he calls us a riot, domestic riot, I think, you know, there's just going to be more people come. They're not going to stand for that either. What's going on out there? Are there a lot of people showing up? Are people still showing up? Are new people showing up? Yes, we just had a press conference here at 1 o'clock, and we started out with very few people there. Before I got through, I had talked to a lot of people, and yeah, there's a lot of people concerning their concern and their love and their prayers, and yes, it just seems to get bigger and bigger. Now, when these people heard that Senator Harry Reid called you a domestic terrorist, was there a reaction? Have you talked to the people who are standing locked arm in arm with you? You know, I don't think anybody knows about that out here. At least this first time I heard about it, nobody mentioned it so far. What do you think the reaction is going to be when those people hear that they're domestic terrorists? Well, they're probably a little bit like I am. I guess we are rioting. Whether we're domestic rioters, I don't know, but I'll tell you, there's unhappy people here, and we are rioting against the federal government. Those people are carrying guns and pointing them at us. I don't think we're going to put up with that in America. Okay, so what's next? What's it going to take for the people who are backing you or who are with you to feel that this conflict is over, to disperse? Well, you know, their demand was take these guns away from these bureaucrats, and I think they're going to hold to that. You know, a lot of people can't understand what they're talking about here, but you realize that you can watch the films and movies which you people have seen that I haven't even seen, and you know, when those people retreated, the ELM armed forces retreated, they took their guns, they took their vehicles, and they moved across the freeways and got on I-15 and went north. And, you know, that's the last time I'm mad at media. Why in the heck don't they know where those people went? Why didn't those county and city sheriffs arrest these people? They've been abusing American people. They've abused my private property. They've abused my cattle. They've abused my range improvements. And they abused hundreds of citizens by pointing those guns. And yet nobody says nothing. We haven't heard no media. We haven't heard nothing about a county sheriff questioning they're a convoy of at least 100 vehicles going up north on I-15. We never heard of nothing about them. Where did they go? This is a question people are wanting to know. Where do these guns go? Right. Now, let me just draw a little line here. If some person robbed a convenience store and he went into Mesquite, Nevada, the police would pick him up as fast as they could. If he went into Arizona, went across the borders into Utah, went into Utah County, they'd chase that guy down until they caught him. It didn't matter if they had to chase him here to New York. But here was 200 armed with heavy weapons and 100 cars, and nobody seems to know where they went. They just disappeared. Just like they went into a tunnel, and it was just okay. Right. Hey, Mr. Bundy, we're going to have to leave it there. We have a Senator Rand Paul on standby right now. We're going to go to him in a second. We're going to say thank you to rancher Cliven Bundy. And from the great state of Kentucky is Senator Rand Paul. Senator, thank you for joining us. By the way, hat tip for being the first 2016 potential candidate to weigh in on the Bundy Ranch. Sir, when you hear Senator Harry Reid call the Bundy family domestic terrorists, now, what you believe, whatever side you are on this whatsoever, is there any reason to call Americans domestic terrorists?
No, I think what we should all be calling for is for calmer heads to prevail. I don't want to see violence on either side. There is a legitimate constitutional question here about whether the state should be in charge of endangered species or whether the federal government should be. But I don't think calling people's names is going to calm this down. I think it's liable to stir it up. So I think all parties, including Senator Reid, should calm the rhetoric a little bit. Let's try to have a peaceful resolution to this. That being said, the Endangered Species Act has been abused across America. We have a lake in Kentucky they won't put any more water in because they're worried about a fish. And I keep asking them, don't fish like water? We have a bat in our state where you have to pay the federal government to use your own land to cut down your timber. You have to pay them $2,000 an acre if they find a bat on your land. So it really is government overreach, government gone amok with this Endangered Species Act. And here's the real question we have to ask the federal government. They say that Mr. Bundy owes some back fees. If he pays his fees, will they let him graze his 900 head of cattle? My understanding, the way I think I understand this, is no matter what he pays, they're not going to let him graze his cattle anymore. So really we have to balance the needs of a turtle and the needs of man and the needs and the rights of property owners. And this is a real, I think, intellectual and constitutional and legal debate, but it shouldn't be about violence of arms, and I hope that the government will not be there in full arms and provoke a showdown and something terrible will happen. I hope that doesn't happen.
Well, isn't that what the stage is being set for, and maybe because of what Senator Reid had just said? He not only called the Bundy family domestic terrorists, the supporters, the people who believe in whatever's going on out there, if they're on the Bundy side, they're domestic terrorists as well. Doesn't that sound like he's setting it up for maybe some more military action, maybe bringing some feds in there, maybe having this escalate?
Yeah, I don't know what will happen. All I know is from my perspective, I have a legal solution to this. I have a bill that I introduced last year, and I believe the senator from Nevada, Senator Heller, is a sponsor of this bill. This would give states more control over the land and more control over the Endangered Species Act. I would like to see the governor of Nevada and the state legislature of Nevada be in charge of trying to help preserve species, but also aware of cattlemen and ranchers' needs. Nobody in Washington really knows anything about ranching or grazing of cattle or the long history that's gone on with this. We need to take this out of the hands of Washington, but let's have a rational debate without violence, without incitement on either side. But I have a bill that would actually fix this problem. It's been in the hopper for over a year. We should ask Senator Reid if he'll let me have a vote on it.
Senator, also, you know, I know we wanted to get on a couple other topics, but let's just stay on this for another minute or so. You know, a couple of years ago, there was a Delta smelt. Remember that little fish where they diverted the water from Northern California around, you know, where that great growing area in Central California, and really kind of jacked up prices for everything from bread to produce and whatnot, all over this Delta smelt, this 2-inch fish. Is government overreach just getting out of control?
Absolutely. I can give you 10 different examples just in Kentucky. We tried to build a sewage plant in a small town in Kentucky because when it rained, the sewage was flowing into the river, and nobody wants that. So we tried to build a bigger sewage plant, and they said we couldn't because it might affect the mussel population. So we had to spend months and months and hundreds of thousands of dollars to count the mussels, and then they finally let us do it. But that's what's happening. The EPA, Fish and Wildlife, the Corps, they get involved every time you try to do something. And think about it. Everybody wants a sewage plant to be adequate so raw sewage doesn't go in the river. We all agree to that. But the EPA and all this crazy environmentalism has us counting mussels, and in the end we do build a sewage plant, but after wasting time, money on something that I don't believe actually is really endangered.
All right, so that's what they had to say about it. We're kind of pressed for time here, so we're going to move on to some other topics. I have some more time. I'll comment more about this. But right now, it's time for my favorite part of the show, and we like to call it the Weekly Defender.
And now it's time for the Weekly Defender. You have the right to defend your life, the right to defend your family, and the right to defend your freedom.
All right, this is the Weekly Defender. This is a segment that we report about armed citizens in the news who have used their firearms to defend their family, their property, and or themselves. So our first Weekly Defender we found on KSBW News in Santa Cruz. A homeowner was asleep in Salinas, California when he was awakened to a noise coming from outside the home. The homeowner then spotted someone near his garage. After arming himself, the homeowner went to the garage to investigate and found a burglar. The homeowner shot the burglar, who was then transported to a local hospital. According to news outlet KSBW, police told reporters that it appears the homeowner was protecting his life and property and was within his legal right to use deadly force. So this happened on the 14th of April. This is just the other day, 6 days ago. So that's pretty crazy. Our next weekly defender we found on Fox 2 Now in St. Louis. A 24-year-old man drove a stolen truck to Cobb's Grocery in Richwoods, Montana. He entered the store and he drew a canister of mace and a knife and demanded money. Ken Cobb was inside the store at the time and responded to the situation by drawing his gun and firing at the criminal, striking him in the abdomen. The robber fled the scene in the stolen truck, but was captured by police a short time later. The armed robber should have known not to attempt to rob Cobb's Grocery, as the store proudly displays signs about the Second Amendment and armed self-defense in the front of the window there of the store. So that's pretty cool. He's got all these sign posters, these Second Amendment signs, but this guy was stupid and robbed him anyway. And he brought a knife to a gunfight. That's pretty comical. Anyway, a neighbor shared similar sentiment while speaking with the local news outlet about Ron Cobb's, Ken's father, and the owner of the store, stating, "Everybody knows that he's got weapons and that you don't rob that man. No one around here, that they've been there for years. He's been a retired police officer and a firefighter, so you don't rob this guy." And that happened on the 8th of this month. So anyway, we at On the Move, we support your rights. If you have a story about how you lawfully defended yourself or you'd like to comment on one of these stories, we would love to hear from you. Give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com, and we'll be happy to get your story out there. Again, we support your rights. You have a right to defend your life. You have a right to defend your family, and you have a right to defend your freedom. So, feel free to send us your stories or comment on any of these. Anyway, this leads us to our next segment of the day, and we like to call it the Listener Challenge. So here it is.
I challenge you to a duel. Did you hear that? Sounds like it's time for a challenge. Listener Challenge. Listener Challenge. Listener Challenge. Listener Challenge.
All right, this Listener Challenge is simple. So your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to share this show with your friends, your family. You can choose to share with one of them or all of them. But actually have a conversation with your friends about this show. Try to get them to tune in and join our conversation that we have here every week. And don't just stop there. Have them go to our Facebook page, the actual group page, and join the conversation on the group. Go to facebook.com/groups/OnTheMoveShow and have them join our Facebook group. We'd love to have them as a member of our community. And, consider this Listener Surge Challenge, okay? This is a surge challenge. We want to get more listeners, more people into the audience, more people into the conversation. And if you enjoy listening to this show, then help it grow. Like I say every week, this is your show, and you can help make the show bigger and better. And that's this week's challenge, okay? Everybody speak up, stand out, or I mix that up. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. Anyway, now we got a few more minutes here. I'm happy that I was able to plow through a lot of that stuff. I would like to comment back on the Harry Reid situation where Clive Bundy and Rand Paul had spoke about that. So anyway, my biggest thing is that a lot of people think this might be an isolated event, something that won't ever happen again, something that probably will never occur, ever again. But I think this situation will happen again. If you don't think it will happen again, think again. The government is restricting all forms of industry in this country. They use global warming as an excuse to practically bankrupt our coal industry, which then increases our energy costs. And might I point out that Obama said that he was going to bankrupt the coal industry, Let's take a look at it. It's practically bankrupt. He's doing a good job. He's keeping his word. So, Anyway, now they're preventing the Keystone XL pipeline from being built, which, again, it's going to increase energy costs. They've prevented fracking, which, again, increases energy costs. You see the cycle that they're doing? It's perpetual. They just keep doing it over and over again. And they claim that they're protecting desert turtles by kicking the cattle off the public land that's been used to graze for centuries, which obviously is going to increase cost of meat. If it costs more money to provide hay to these cows, then it's going to cost more money to buy the meat at the store. Those farmers aren't just going to eat that money that they're having to spend out of pocket. It's going to come to you and me, the consumer. I had a conversation the other day, actually more of a thought process out loud the other day, and I was looking at all the stuff on my plate, and I was like, wow, all this stuff, it came from somewhere, and I started trying to actually figure out, where all my food came from and how it might have got to me. It's really fascinating to think how far your food may travel, or, all the processes and steps involved just to getting it to your plate. A lot of people don't think about it, but these people, these ranchers, these farmers, these people that are providing our energy, they're feeding us, they're clothing us, they're keeping us warm, they're allowing us to live the cushy lives that we're used to, and we're treating them like crap. We're not stepping up and defending them from the government overreach that they're experiencing right now. And we can see the overreach right now through things like Obamacare, where they've increased your deductible to $6,000 while simultaneously doubling and tripling your premiums. This is all just the tip of the iceberg, ladies and gentlemen. If you think we'll never see an armed conflict against the federal government again, you're sadly mistaken. And I'm not advocating that. I would just like to point out the fact that I am not an advocate for violence. I hope it never comes to that. I never want to see it. But the people are fed up. I'm fed up. There's only so much that people can take. I don't advocate violence, but I'm also not advocating being victimized by the government either. Eventually, it comes to a point where you can't take it anymore. They can only take so much away from you. You can only give up so much of your liberties. They can back you into that corner, but eventually you have nowhere else to go. And it's either fight or lose everything. And that's what the founders of this country did at one point. It's, at what point is enough? Enough. At what point can I give you enough to get you off my back? This is what this country was established on. They tried every form of recourse that they could. They tried to talk. They tried to petition to the king. They tried to address the problems that they felt were injustices, but they were ignored. And they kept getting pushed back further and further into the corner. And then eventually they lashed out at things like the Boston Tea Party. And we should look at this moment in history, the Clive and Bundy incident, as our modern-day Boston Tea Party. Except the only people that damaged property was the government. The only people that were violent was the BLM. The citizens that were at this protest, that were at this supporting Clive and Bundy, those are not the people that were instilling violence on other people, forcing people to the ground, tasering people, attacking people with dogs. That was the BLM. So I'll leave you with this question. Who are the domestic terrorists? Because the violence wasn't imposed from our people, the patriots of the Clive and Bundy ranch. That was the violence that was imposed from the government. So who are the real domestic terrorists, I ask you? Anyway, that's our show for today. We're going to wrap things up. I sure do appreciate you all listening today, and we have more that we didn't get to today that we'll be covering next show. I want to talk about how the EPA is trying to regulate cow farts and how that's going to affect you at your dinner table. So anyway, I want to thank you all, my listeners, for tuning in each day to our program here and your program here. Thank you for tuning in week after week. And I want to thank the Clark family for calling in, and Josh for calling in. Thank you so much for calling in. Don't forget to check us out at OnTheMoveShow.com, here at blogtalkradio.com/OnTheMoveShow every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Check me out at Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow, YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow, and Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. Don't forget to follow us here at Blog Talk, by the way. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, get on the move.